Good morning. Welcome to Drafting Out Loud. And I gotta say, this is your last chance for a couple players at good value. Let's take a look. And we're gonna jump right in. Those players that I think we got a last chance call on are rising up the boards, and those are David Montgomery and DJ Moore. You can see they're up 12% for the week and 8% respectively. A lot for the month, which we already knew, but they're rising up this week. They're two of the higher rising players for the day as well. And they are starting to close the gap on what you see on DraftKings. We expected them to start rising up because they were so high on DraftKings, and they finally are. Now, I think it's debatable how much of a value they are as they start to rise up at this point, or even how much of a value they were before. But if you're trying to get closing line value, if you're trying to arbitrage other sites, these are two players that you need to put on your team now if that's kind of your goal. Now, if you are just trying to get the players you want the most, based on what you think are the best players, right? Do what you want to do. But if you're trying to play the market a little bit, David Montgomery, DJ Moore, I think this is your last chance on those two players. There are some other players that maybe aren't as exciting, but they're starting to get close to last chance as well, just kind of squeeze that last bit of value on them. Chris Rodriguez now going in the middle of the 140s. A lot of the value squeezed out of that one, and he's still rising up the boards, 11% for the week and almost 2% for the day. And so there's still a little bit something there, but it is not nearly as much. That Kyron Williams is the third highest riser for the day. I think that's just because he's now going probably before Bucky Irving in a lot of drafts. And so there's kind of like flip-flopping a little bit, and maybe he's rising a bit for the day. You can see for the month he's fallen, but for the week he's static, and for the day he's rising. So maybe just more flip-flop between him and Bucky Irving as Bucky Irving starts to fall to the middle of the fourth, or maybe even the end of the fourth in some cases. Christian Kirk, we got a couple of wide receivers here that are similar. We got Christian Kirk, we got Malik Washington, we got Hollywood Brown, all three late round wide receivers that are rising up boards. Two of them are on teams now, Christian Kirk on San Francisco, Hollywood Brown on Philadelphia, and Malik Washington is now the assumed number one right now on Miami. I do think that when it comes to these three, they are totally different, though, as far as why you're drafting them a little bit. I mean, number one, obviously, if you have a stack, it makes sense to draft them. But I do think that keep in mind what you're getting with these three players a little bit. If you do take, excuse me, if you do decide to take Christian Kirk, he's probably the almost the guaranteed number three on the team in the slot. That being said, if San Francisco does take another wide receiver, who knows what happens there between like Pearsall and Christian Kirk. And then with Malik Washington, he's the number one right now in Miami, at least the assumed number one. But that's, again, assumed number one. There are a couple other wide receivers. Who knows if the coaching staff likes Malik Washington or not. Also, Miami is in line to probably draft a wide receiver or two as well. So he could easily get bumped down the pecking order due to draft or due to coach's preference. I think he's fine here, right? Like these are all just flyers. He's probably got a role no matter what you'd assume, but I wouldn't be drafting him assuming he's guaranteed to be the number one. In fact, probably less likely to be the number one, if anything. And then we have Hollywood Brown here. And I think Hollywood Brown might be the most interesting of the three. And that's only because right now, AJ Brown is still on the team. Now, if AJ Brown does get traded, then Hollywood Brown probably rises up the boards here. I don't know how exciting he is as the number two on Philadelphia if AJ Brown does get traded, but you got to expect him to probably rise up a lot if that does happen. And Philadelphia has a new offensive coordinator, so who knows what that means for their pass catchers. So I do think if you're trying to look for one of these three players to be a non-stack that could rise up the boards the most. I do think Hollywood Brown is probably your best bet. Conveniently, he is the cheapest out of the three of these players as well. If you're looking for just a solid player that's probably going to catch some passes, Christian Kirk might be the best bet of the three in that case. San Francisco has had a good offense the last couple of years. Even when they've been beat up, they've still had a pretty good offense. Christian Kirk has established himself as a relatively safe slot receiver when healthy. And right now he's healthy. So he might be the safest of the three, but Hollywood Brown might be the one you get the biggest bang for your buck on. Malik Washington, I guess if he ends up still being the number one after the draft, you'd expect him to rise up as well. That being said, I think it's tough for him to stay the number one after the draft. And it's a tough team to be the number one on with a running QB and really nothing else on that team for the most part outside of HM. Who else we got here that we haven't looked at yet? We got Romeo Dobbs, and he's now getting close to the pick 100, getting closer to what we see on DK, if I'm not mistaken. He might still be a value. He's still a value, I think, relative to DK, but it's maybe not as much of a value. Most of the value is probably squeezed out of this pick, but maybe there's just a little bit more. I think Aaron Jones, he's still rising up the boards, and I like the Aaron Jones pick. I don't think many other people do, but I heard some people say that they feel like he lost a step, but watching him in Minnesota when he was in the game and not injured, I always felt like he ran well. He's a threat to catch the ball out of the backfield. He's the pass catching back right now. I guess the biggest concern, a couple concerns. One, injury. Two, age. Three, does Minnesota go out and draft or sign another running back? And if but really only one of those things can like move his price right now, right? And that his age is his age and his injury history is his injury history. But obviously the draft is in a month and they might sign another back. If they do sign another back, depending on where it is, like if maybe like in the first 2 or 3 rounds, then you got to reevaluate what happens at that point in time. But if they don't sign another back, you got to expect him to just keep on rising up the boards, right? Is what I'd expect. So I've been taking Aaron Jones once he gets past pick 130 for the most part, depending on my build. There was a draft yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, where I ended up with Aaron Jones on my team with a Kyler Murray stack. So you got that going on. DeAndre Swift, you can see here is, and who knows if this is just a fluky thing. He's up 1% both for the day, week, and month. So who knows what's going on there. He's kind of just holding steady around this pick. Some people are really high on him. There's been a lot of smoke in Chicago and running backs over the last 2 or 3 years. And so I think there's some risk with this pick. This is like a very dead zone type of running back. That being said, he definitely was productive. And if he's productive again, he's well worth this pick. So I like, he does fall sometimes. I like getting him when he falls. I'm really not targeting him early. That's kind of been my MO for most of the running backs in general. The running backs, this is one of the only running backs that I feel like falls to the back half of the draft around this time. You got like your Scadaboo, your Judkins, your Swift. But if you're in the back half of the draft, you're trying to push running backs, it can get ugly pretty quick where you only have a couple options, and Swift is one of those options. If he starts rising up the boards and the other running backs don't start falling down the boards, then it gets even harder. And your best options at running back then are to get running backs in the first, at the first, second, and third round before they start to really the first and second, really the first and second round mainly before they start to dry up if you're in the back half of the board. J.K. Dobbins is still rising up the boards here to 108, and I think there might still be some value here considering Denver did get another pass catcher in Jalen Waddle. That means ideally they just have a better offense than they did last year. And J.K. Dobbins ideally then ends up more touchdowns because of that. So it makes sense he's rising. And if they didn't get Waddle, maybe, 108 is a little expensive. I think maybe there's still a little bit of something something there. I wouldn't feel bad about taking J.K. Dobbins at pick 100. Around that same time, if I'm not mistaken, you got Kyle Monangai. You have who's kind of fallen a little bit, another Chicago back, and you have Blake Corum back up for the Rams. And I think J.K. Dobbins might be the best pick out of three of those. Now, obviously, probably the biggest injury risk in J.K. Dobbins out of three of them, but he also has the best chance probably to start out of the three of them. Denver has a lot of chatter out there that Denver isn't as excited about R.J. Harvey, even though they drafted him really high up in the draft last year. And J.K. Dobbins didn't really relinquish that role as the primary ball carrier until he got hurt last year. And R.J. Harvey didn't do as much with that role as you'd want once he got it. And so does Denver still just trust J.K. Dobbins more? And does J.K. Dobbins, again, get that primary running role this year? If he does, pick 108. Thank you very much. You're going to love that pick, and you're going to run with it. So I do think there's something there as far as that goes. If you want to go and grab the other two in Kyle Monangai or Blake Corum, you're more hoping for an injury for them to have that primary role. That being said, they did have nice roles last year. Maybe they keep them this year. Travis Kelce rising up the boards a little bit here at 140. 12% for the month just because he's signed his contract. That's probably why he's up for the day as well. He signed his contract. Some people think he's going to settle at pick like 100 or something like that. And I don't know. I'm not that excited about Travis Kelce. He did an okay season last year. He's gonna just get you some consistent points, but I don't think he's gonna win it for you when you get into the playoffs. So draft him on your team, specialty falls, I guess, or if you need tight ends. I think he is a decent. If you're avoiding tight ends and Travis Kelce just shows up there, like thank you, give me the points. But I'm not trying to run him up the boards to make sure I get the stack or something like that. I don't think. Tyler Algier still rising up the boards, which is a little surprising. I feel like I've seen him fall more than rise recently in drafts, but he's rising. The numbers say so. I knew for the month he's rising, but for the week he's still rising, and for the day he's rising a little bit. He's not on Atlanta. We need to fix that one. He's on Arizona now. Not super excited about that landing spot. I think it's kind of an ugly landing spot for him. And just because of the team and then like the competition that he's got, I'll take him if I've got like a zero running back build and I just need to fill out some running backs. Ideally, he gets like first crack at being the starter, which would make sense considering he's the new guy, signed the new contract. He's the healthy running back as well. You'd expect him to start the season at least as the starter. And so on a zero RB build, maybe he makes sense if you can really get a nice value on Tyler Algier. There's nothing else in that range that you like, right? You go hard QB or tight end or wide receiver, and you don't need what's out there. And you just kind of go, okay, well, I don't need the other picks. I guess I'll take a running back now because I know I need them. He's a good pick for that type of thing. But I don't know. I'm not that excited about him as like, yes, I got the Arizona non-pass catching running back. And then Chase Brown, you can see here, is not rising up for the month, but he's starting to rise up for the week just a tad. This could be noise, or this could be people are not as excited about the rookies as much, like even Jeremiah Love, or they're not as excited about Omarion Hampton because of what's going on in the running back room over there on the Chargers. And you'll see Brown get pulled up sometimes ahead of some of those other running backs. So this might be a little bit of something there also. Keep that, or also it might be a little bit of George Pickens and concern about him signing, like not holding out. And just something to evaluate to look at here. Brown's profile is a shaky one itself. Last year when there was lots of running backs, there was concern that Brown would end up with some major competition and maybe take a back seat. But he did prove by the end of the year that if he does get the main role, he can get a lot of volume, both catching and running, and end up with a lot of points for you. Um, so if he does end up being the only starter on the team, I think it's a great pick. But there's a risky pick. There's still a couple free agents out there. There's still the draft. So, and I don't know how much he rises if he ends up being, if he ends up clean after all those things happen. Maybe he rises a little bit, or maybe he stays around the same. Um, at worst, he probably rises to the middle of the second round. So I don't think you need to be drafting him too heavily right now, assuming he rises. And in fact, if he starts to rise, then you just get him where other people are already drafting him at right now. And you get some variation because of that. So whatever, it is what it is. Just the last player on the list. We got our fallers here. And in fact, look at that. George Pickens is a faller on the list. And so maybe, again, that's part of the reason why we got Chase Brown rising a little bit. Who else we have as fallers on here? Some of these are expected. Let's go over the expected fallers first. And some of these are expected fallers because what we learned yesterday, what's going on in DK, all the free agents and all the rookies seem to be falling. There's only a couple that are rising, and they're rising at like the smallest levels. So essentially all the rookies and free agents are falling. Over here, who are the expected players to be falling? We got Trey Benson, we got Pat Bryant, we have Deebo Samuel, we have Juwan Jennings, we have Jonah Coleman, we have and Jordan Tyson. Expected for all those players to essentially be falling at this point in time. Trey Benson is like the third running back. Some people, and the third running back with a bad knee right now, and no news saying like he's good. He couldn't even get back last year for something that was expected for him to kind of make it before the end of the year. So people are kind of concerned he is out of the league at this point in time. I was excited about him at the beginning of the year, but once they signed Tyler Algier, that makes you start to evaluate otherwise, and everyone else is also 36% down for the month. And makes sense. I'm not really clicking him at all. Even if he falls past this pick, I'll let someone else take him. Even if there's good news, is the news going to be he is the number 2 over Connor? I doubt it. So I'll just let him continue to fall and not really click him much. I'll let someone else take him. Pat Bryant, he's going to start to get attractive here probably if he keeps on falling as a pick for Denver. But it's kind of tough because he's been booted out of that guaranteed 1 or 2 role for the most part now that they have Sutton and Waddle on the team. So expected for him to fall. Next one that was expected to fall that we see on here is actually 2 of them, Juwan Jennings and Jonah Coleman. Juwan Jennings is a free agent right now, and Coleman's a rookie. We're just seeing all of them fall. I think there's value to scoop there with those picks, especially if they continue to fall. Especially if they continue to fall, and they're definitely continue to fall in drafts, like a whole round or more past these picks. So if you want them on your team, but there's something else that you kind of are intrigued with as well, I'd probably be taking the other pick and seeing if you can push those players another round. It can happen. Juwan Jennings probably won't be signing for a little bit, like we talked about yesterday. So take advantage of that and don't take them at ADP. Let them continue to fall. And unless you need them on your team at that pick or something like that. And then Jordan Tyson, another rookie down at the bottom there. He's continued to fall. He's got some injury concerns. Listen to people that are smarter than me. It sounds like those injury concerns are already baked in. And so he probably shouldn't be falling because of the injury concerns. That being said, it sounds like this draft class isn't the most exciting draft class. Jordan Tyson might be the safest pick out of the 3 running backs from a skill set perspective, but he also might be the riskiest as far as the offense he played on being one where he was just funneled targets, and then the injury history as well. I think just like Juwan Jennings, Jonah Coleman, let the rookies continue to fall. You can get Tyson way more than a round past this in some drafts. And I don't think you want to be overweight at cost on him. I think you want to, if you be overweight, if you can keep on getting well past cost, maybe I guess. But I don't think you want to be overweight at cost on him. Who do we have left on this board? We have a bunch of tight ends, is what we have left, basically. We got AJ Barner, Brock Bowers, Sam Laporta, Kyle Pitts, all slowly trickling down the board for, and let's see if it's like a trend thing for Laporta, 8% for the month, for Pitts, 8% for the month, Barner, 3% for the month, Bowers, 12% for the month. So this is a trendy sort of thing as far as them falling down for, it looks like the month, the week, and the day. Um, I think it makes sense to do that, like with Laporta, um, and Pitts. There's a lot of interesting picks around pick 100 that you can take. And so, do you really want to grab a tight end that is a risky profile? There, Laporta, at least last year, didn't seem to be that spiky of a tight end, just kind of consistently getting some points, but also injured his back. And Pitts, didn't really do much. Like people uh, at the beginning of the draft, there I think he was rated so high at the beginning. He's fallen, like you can see here, only 8% for the month, but he's fallen a lot more than that since the beginning. Um, he had the great week in the playoffs. People remember that, but if you kind of take that week out, which I know it's cherry picking at that point in time, but if you take that week out, he was not one of the top tight ends. But once you put that monster week in, of course, he's going to fly up the boards. That's what a 40-point week's going to do for you. Um, but he was not one of the top tight ends. He was not going to get you. He was not the player that got you to the playoffs at all. In fact, and I don't know this for a fact actually, so I shouldn't say in fact, but he probably was a neutral player at best to get you to the playoffs, I'd imagine. But he definitely was the player to get you advancing to the second round of the playoffs if you did draft him. So it makes sense that he's falling as well, if you ask me here. It's tough when you don't know who their quarterback's going to be, so you don't know who to stack him with. Also, so that's probably also why he's falling. At this point, they're probably values at some point in time, but I don't think they're the biggest values. I don't know about overstacking Detroit. Also, like for example, you can get Gibbs and stack him with Jameson Williams, which I've done, and then Laporta came around later on, and I could have like triple stacked it and gotten Goff, but I decided to like just double stack it and get another player. So I think it's also maybe why he's falling a little bit. Maybe other people are thinking similar to me. I do like maybe like a double stack where you get Gibbs and Laporta, or you get Williams and Laporta, or Amon-Ra and Laporta, and then get Goff as well. But getting the triple stack on Detroit with Laporta doesn't seem as exciting because Laporta just didn't hit that way. And I don't know if he's going to hit that way anymore. And I could be wrong, but that's kind of my take there. And that's maybe why he's fallen a little bit too. Like he's just not as comfy of a stacking partner, right? With all the other high-end Detroit players ahead of him. AJ Barner falling, and then Bowers falling. You see Bowers go to the third round, and what's interesting is Bowers falling, but also George Pickens is falling, and that's maybe again why Chase Brown's rising a little bit because these players are falling. Bowers at the end of the second seems like a nice pick already, and in the third round, I don't know how you can pass it up. So take your Bowers. That being said, there's only so many players that make it there to the end of the round, so you might get very similar teams. How do you get less similar teams at that point? I don't know. That's tough, right? Like, because if he's going there, like the first and second picks are almost always Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and then Jamar Chase or Puka. And I think it's tough to take someone other than those players with your first four picks. You only get so many first, second, third, and fourth picks throughout the year. And if you're passing on those players, you're maybe underweight on someone that could be a league winner. So you might end up with Bowers with those players more than anyone else. I think maybe part of it is just I think what you want to do maybe is don't be overweight Bauer's second round right now. That way you won't be that way when he gets to the third round, you won't be overweight Bowers overall, and you won't be duping yourself with too many lineups that are exactly the same. So if you got one of those first four picks, maybe you just more often than not right now push Bowers around into the third round and see if he gets to you in the third round. It's happened to me twice where I had, I think, the second pick and I took someone else. I think actually probably was George Pickens or someone like that. And then the number one hole passed on Bowers and you end up with Bowers in the second round. So I got like two Bowers, maybe Bowers Gibbs teams or whatever it is. And they're both because Bowers isn't. I got him in the third round. Um, so there you go. I think that's what you do. Maybe like even if you have a Chase or Puka with the third or fourth pick, don't go overweight Bowers. Let him continue to fall and try to see if he ends up going into the third round. At worst, he doesn't, and then you just later on go, okay, I guess I'll take my Bowers and my Chase type of thing. But get unique there where you can and get some value on Bowers where you can. There are your fall. Oh, then Barner. Barner's an interesting pick. I never feel good taking that pick. And I've taken Barner mainly when other people, I guess, don't feel good about it and he falls. He's fallen 3% for the month. So who knows if he falls more. They got the last year's rookie Arroyo at tight end as well. Who knows if he plays a bigger role. They don't have their offensive coordinator anymore. So who knows how that changes the dynamics of the offense. That being said, Barner is, I think, a good player and a good tight end. Just where is he from a fantasy perspective? I never feel good with that click. And I could be wrong. And I think I'm underweight with that one. And it's also a tough one because their quarterback's injured, right? Or no, that's Sam Darnold. Their quarterback's not injured. So it's not tough because of the quarterback. So, take it if you want it. Realize he's falling a little bit. I'd let him fall unless you really need a tight end. And then ideally, it's you still let him fall, I think. So there you go. There are your fallers. We got our platform values. And like I was saying, last chance on some of these players. We got DJ Moore still has the biggest value. And you can kind of see where he's headed. He's probably headed to the low 50s, at least on Underdog, you'd think, assuming that these start to get closer and closer, which oftentimes they do. They are so far apart. He is rising up the board so much on DK. And even if DK is wrong, if they're not that wrong, there's still value here on DJ Moore. I'm kind of surprised he's already in the 50s even, but there's got to be value there. So I'm not clicking him as much as I should, but maybe I should click him more. And then David Montgomery here, we'll just hit on these two first. You can see he was actually like higher up. He's starting to go down a little bit because he's rising in price on Underdog. Still a good value relative to DraftKings. And again, both these players are probably better values, not just because of their draft capital, but also because of their profile being more touchdown makers versus yardage and reception makers. And so I do think they're better values for that perspective on Underdog as well. So I would be, if I'm just trying to get closing line value and trying to arbitrage my Underdog versus DraftKings teams, I think these are players I should be targeting more and getting around this part of the draft. Just at least a little bit more probably. They're probably going to rise, so you'll probably get close line value at the very least to be happy about that. I do like the Colby Parkinson pick, like a last round tight end like Colby Parkinson. I think makes a lot of sense. He's right there below David Montgomery. And I even think if you're pushing your tight ends, you end up with like a Colby Ferguson, and I've said this like every time probably. Colby Ferguson and Terrence Ferguson as like two of your tight ends, as the two primary Ram tight ends. If you want to push your tight ends, I like it. Speaking of tight ends, we also have Loveland on here too. He's been on this kind of like bottom section of the Underdog values sheet. He's going towards the end of the fourth round, and you get him in the fifth round every once in a while. Also, Loveland, I think, is a good pick. Parker Washington has been on this sheet forever, and still a good value there at pick 73. I see him go in the 80s every once in a while on Underdog also. I wouldn't be trying to pull Parker Washington up into the 60s, like especially the low 60s. But um, at cost, I think is great. Like if you're at the beginning of at the end of what I'm not even sure what round that would be, 12. If you're at the beginning of the sixth round and I probably wouldn't take him there oftentimes because you might get lucky and he might fall all the way to the end of the seventh round. I've seen it happen. And I think that makes some sense to do. Like, don't just try to pull up his ADP here more than you need to. Unless you really like him, go for it. Wandale Robinson, we've talked about why he's a value on here, and it makes sense why there's the spread on that one. Zach Charbonnet, I think we're just not being smart on DraftKings, and that's one of the value. I think that's the value on DraftKings is if you go on there, someone else is pulling Zach Charbonnet all the way up to pick 116, and that means they don't have a running back on their team for a lot of the draft. I haven't drafted much Zach Charbonnet, even on Underdog. 144 still seems to be pricey. I think I drafted him once on a team where I had like 3 or 4 running backs, and Charbonnet fell past ADP. And I'm like, okay, well, he'll be my 5th running back. I don't need him until the end of the season. And maybe he's like a late round unique hammer type of pick, which would be nice if that happens for that team. But I think it's tough to take him early in a lot of builds. Um, who do we have left on here that's exciting to talk about as far as platform values? Romeo Dobbs, the platform value, he just keeps on rising up on DK. Momentum again is a thing, and Dobbs is almost going to be in the 80s here in a bit. He's at 90.3 right now, and so there's maybe still, I think there's still, a little bit of value here on Underdog. This is another pick where I know DraftKings is a PPR site, but Romeo Dobbs isn't thought of as a PPR scam. Um, on the Patriots, he might be used a little bit differently and catch some more balls. But a 15 pick spread between the two of them and a 15% value on Underdog seems to be a little extreme. I think someone's wrong here a little bit on this one. There is some risk in this profile though. So I wouldn't be jumping at it too much, right? Like the risk is that there is still the draft. There's some high-end wide receivers in the draft, and there's even some wide receivers still in free agency, even like Stephon Diggs. I guess they could maybe even bring him back. And then what happens if you have Diggs and Dobbs on the team? Who is the one that's feeding more? I don't know. As always, quarterbacks are a little bit more of a value on Underdog, and that starts with the top QB in Josh Allen. You can get him in the middle of the third versus the beginning of the third. It becomes an appealing pick as you go further along. One of the tough things with Josh Allen, I think it still is a tough thing, is that if you do take Josh Allen early, then you miss. I think you almost have to miss out on some of the interesting QBs later on, like your Hurts and your Jane Daniels, your Drake Mays, your Lamar Jackson, things like that. It gets hard to invest that much capital on QB, and I do think those other quarterbacks are maybe even more value than Josh Allen because you're taking them multiple rounds later. And is Josh Allen really going to outscore them by that much? I don't know. And you can take 2 of those players and feel okay about it, while you can't take Josh Allen with those players and feel as good about it. So that's my that's why I think it's tough to take Josh Allen. You're going to miss out on a falling running QB later on potentially. That being said, if you do take Josh Allen, then you can just kind of keep on pushing QB and just being cool with it the whole draft almost. There's one that I went really skinny. It's almost a 1 quarterback build. I have Josh Allen and Mendoza as my second QB. And not that I feel good about it, not like that's what I wanted to do. It's just how the draft went. And we'll see if Mendoza makes it. And if not, it's almost like a 1 QB build, which isn't something that I really look to do. But, whatever. It's going to be what I did. Rashee Rice, a little bit more of a value on Underdog. I have not seen it happen, but apparently Rashee Rice gets into the next round. I don't think I've ever seen him get into the 4th round. But I guess other people have. And I think Rashee Rice, even at pick 34 starts to get interesting. I don't know how many times I've even passed up on him. I feel like he always gets drafted before he gets to me. Um, but if he doesn't get suspended and word is out, like the news goes out, like he's good for the whole year type of thing, he's got to rise up the boards probably all the way to maybe even the first round type of thing. So be prepared if there's good news to just jump on him hardcore. Um, right now, I think he makes sense to sprinkle in, especially if you can find a falling Rice, which again I haven't. And they've got some more QBs at the bottom there with Joe Burrow and Shedeur Sanders. Joe Burrow is an interesting one. I like when you can push them all the way to the chase pick, and I had a video on that. Um, that being said, I think he makes sense to take earlier with T. Higgins as well, and maybe I should do a video on that one also. Not saying you should take him every single time with T. Higgins, but if something intriguing doesn't get to you there, I think it kind of makes sense to pack up with T. Higgins also. You can get Gesicki in the last round of the draft, like consistently, and that doesn't make much sense to me why you can get him so late. I don't know if they're expecting Cincinnati to take another tight end or something like that. I don't think they will. And Burrow likes Gesicki, so it's kind of crazy you can go that late. I like that pick if you're going like a 3 or 4 tight end late build. There are your values and risers. Again, last chance on DJ Moore and David Montgomery. Not the quarterbacks, let the free agents and the rookies continue to fall. Like, don't get overly aggressive on those players. There is value to be had at tight end late, so don't box yourself into Brock Bowers. Push him around the turn. I think right now, even though Brock Bowers is a great pick, maybe he's a better pick if you get him in the third round. And be strategic with your use of Josh Allen drafting in the third round. Also, pay attention to the Josh Allen drafter and what else they drafted. That can give you a clue of what you can do when you push things around too. There you go. That's what we got for the day. Let me know how you feel about the market movers on Underdog, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.